Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 436 of CryptoBiography, and it's part one of Vampire Republic. And here we go. Duncan was one of the few people who knew, before the events late in the year, that vampires did exist. He was studying late, reading at the library until after midnight, and walking back to his home. He always took a strange way back because instead of one of the many dorms, he was living in one of the few small houses owned by the university on the edge of the campus. So much on the edge, in fact, that it was a matter of some debate whether he actually lived on campus or off. Because he wasn't going towards the dorms, but around and behind a few of them, the path was fairly dark. The lights were old and hadn't been updated to modern LEDs. The covers had yellowed, and the light they gave yellowed along with it. Still, he had reasonably good night vision and had never had much trouble getting home. There was a little light from a few of the dorm rooms on the backside of them, but the branches of the trees tended to keep it from the path he traveled below. The weather was cool, damp after a rain in the afternoon, but the sky was currently clear. Sometimes he would listen to music or a podcast on the way home, but tonight he had decided that he needed to sleep and was trying to give his brain a break from stimulation before bed. Because he wasn't wearing headphones, he heard something strange coming from a small stand of trees not too far from the path. He couldn't tell what it was. It sounded organic, some sort of movement or animal sound, but exactly what was happening he wasn't sure. He didn't like messing with animals, even the small ones that were typical on their campus. Plus, he heard someone walking behind him, and he didn't want to do something strange or surreptitious with someone watching. But then he heard it. Someone was making a strange, whimpering noise. When Duncan was 8, he'd been walking home from school, only a couple of blocks away. He was cutting across the park, something he usually did, and heard whimpering noises. He went over to the trees where he heard them coming from. He saw Brian, the class bully, holding down a squirrel. There was a baseball lying nearby, and Duncan assumed that Brian had managed to hit the squirrel with the ball, knocking it out of the tree. Brian was holding it down, and it was squealing and groaning and squirming. But Brian was strong and big for their age. He seemed to be trying to strangle it, but it wriggled enough to bite him. After a pained grunt, Brian made his injured hand into a fist and started beating the squirrel to death. Duncan wanted to say something to stop him, but he'd gotten a similar treatment from Brian several times, and he did not want it again. That day he had slunk away, only trying to get home and forget what happened. But he didn't forget. That day was a decade ago, and he still thought about the squirrel suffering under Brian's grip every time he saw a squirrel. But it was at night, half falling asleep. That was when he heard the squirrel and the squeals it made. This sounded too much like it. That day he had slunk away. This night, he would not. He turned off of the lighted path and toward the stand of trees. He looked around a tree and saw two people. They were standing up, and in other circumstances, Duncan might have assumed they were necking. But one of them, a woman, was squealing. The other one, a man, at least as far as he could see from the back, was holding her against a tree trunk. One hand was pressing hard into her shoulder, and the other was holding her hair, forcing her head back and exposing her neck. Her neck was already bloody. The same fear that came on him when he was 8, that screamed at him to back away and get out of there, came roaring back. He even took a step back. But then he held. He stepped forward. "Hey!" he yelled, and grabbed the man's shoulder, intending on pulling him off of the woman. He didn't know who she was, and when the man spun around, he didn't know him either. He did see that he had very pale skin and fangs that were dripping blood. A vampire? Duncan froze for a moment, and that was more than the vampire needed. He knocked Duncan to the ground, and then leapt upon him. And that's the end of part one. I hope you're enjoying it. I'm enjoying writing it, and so I did a fair bit of sort of background writing this week, so this is going to be a multi-parter, big time. So we'll see how long it actually takes. I try never to sort of force a story into a certain amount of time. I do want it to sort of breathe and take the amount of time it takes. So we will see how long this one goes, but I have quite a few ideas written down, and I'm interested in seeing them through. Hope you're enjoying them too, at least so far. And if you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Blue Sky. And thanks for listening. Words and music copyright 2025, Brandon Starr, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.